Thank you for watching the World Community Magazine's Hour of Power Live on Facebook with your hosts Edward McQueen and April Garner.
Wow. Good evening. Welcome to WCM Live. I'm your host, Ed McQueen, of course, co-host live. Also, Miss April Garner Davis. Now, April, how you doing?
I'm doing great today, or this evening, I should say. How you doing?
Yeah. Somebody's going to call in and ask about your necklace. I don't know who it's going to be, but somebody's going to call in. Beautiful. All right.
Thank you.
So April, one of the topics that has been having very, I'm gonna use the word for lack of a better word, scornful impact on the community, certain segments of the community anyway, and that is a stroke, something that you can't determine. Yeah, it is preventable according to our guest is coming on and so forth. But I'm going to let them tell you all, our viewers, about that. And we have a very special guest today, Dr. Omofoye, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. I'm almost sure I am. But yeah, and we're so glad to have him on. But we've been trying to as you all know, we've been trying to broadcast as much preventive medicine as possible, preventive methods for keeping us healthy. And as you know, lack of better health it runs rampant in our community. Sometimes our fault, sometimes it's not. You know what we're all exposed to. But anyway, we get started. On April, we're going to have Dr. Omofoye, and let's just get right to it.
Okay. All right. Well, we first of all want to thank everyone for tuning in this evening, and want to remind you to drop in your comments and questions, and we will share them with our very special guest, Dr. Omofoye. Good evening. How are you doing?
Good evening. Thanks for asking. I'm doing well. And thank you, Mr. McQueen and Ms. Garner Davis, for giving me the opportunity to talk about this very important topic, particularly for the Black community.
Well, absolutely, man. Such a topic is sorely needed to just more education. That's people will adhere to it. Okay. So, Dr. Omofoye, would you kindly give our audience a little brief background of yourself? I don't know if anybody else is familiar with it. Well, of course, I was not until we were introduced by Mrs. McDavid. We thank her for that. So if you just give us a brief history of yourself, or if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my pleasure. So my name is Dr. Omofoye, and I'm a neurosurgeon at Tidelands Health, which is a big hospital system here in Myrtle through the Myrtle Beach area. I'm originally from Nigeria, so I was born and raised in Nigeria and moved to the U.S. with my family when I was 16. And we sort of relocated to Durham, North Carolina. So Durham, North Carolina is sort of home base now. My parents and have some siblings that live there. And I did my undergraduate degree in medical school at University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. And then, after I got into medical school, I decided I was interested in neurosurgery, and then finished my training on the West Coast in California, at the University of California, Davis, which is in Sacramento. And that's a 7-year training after 4 years of medical school, which is after 4 years of an undergraduate degree. So it's a long training to be a neurosurgeon. My particular area of expertise is actually in brain tumors. So I did an additional training after my residency in neurosurgical oncology, which is brain tumors. And that was in Los Angeles in California at Cedar-Sinai Medical Center, which is in the Beverly Hills and Hollywood area. And then after that training, I decided I wanted to be back on the East Coast to be closer to my family. And so I ended up here at Tidelands Health, which I've now been here for about 2.5 years now, primarily doing brain surgery, mostly brain tumors, but I also deal with
You've got mute on us.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I was saying I mostly do brain surgery for things like brain tumors, bleeding in the brain. Sometimes if there's pain in the face that's caused by nerves and arteries that are not working properly in the brain, I do surgery for that. Sometimes for patients who have a buildup of spinal fluid in the brain called hydrocephalus, I do surgery for that as well. But one of the most common issues relating to the brain is strokes, obviously, and we know there's a disproportionate impact for the Black community. So Black folks are at a higher risk of having strokes compared to people of other race and nationality. And I think it's a very important topic for us to be aware of, the risk factors, the causes, how to prevent it, and I'm happy to speak about that today.
First of all, you have an impressive pedigree, and it's just amazing because, Brother Edward, we are always looking for ways to bring to light people of color who are in the medical field and various fields in areas that we typically would not imagine having people of color, or we just don't see it always. So kudos to you for such an impressive career and coming this far. My main question kind of leans into why neurosurgery and why the focus on brain tumors. Is it something that was just a part of where you come from natively, or is it something that you just saw as a prevalence in the Black community or any community and you wanted to be impactful in that area?
Right. Yeah. So that was an interest that started, during my residency training. So after medical school, and going back to your first question in terms of why neurosurgery, and so growing up, even while I was in Nigeria, I knew I wanted to do medicine. I was just gravitated to medicine just because there was not a lot of doctors in the area where I grew up, and and doctors were considered like superheroes back then, just because there's not a lot, and I was really interested in the sciences, and so I gravitated towards that, and luckily I was able to get into medical school here. And I like working with my hands as well. I actually have an engineering background in terms of my undergraduate and the master's degree before pursuing medical school. So when I got into medical school, I knew I was going to be doing something surgery related. And then my first year as a medical student, I shadowed a neurosurgeon, and saw a really very interesting neurosurgery case where it was a patient with Parkinson's disease, and they used it's called deep brain stimulation. That basically put an electrode into the brain, and with that you can actually stop the Parkinson's disease, the tremors, almost instantaneously. And I thought that was really fascinating. And given my engineering background, I really thought that was pretty cool, and that was kind of how I got interested in neurosurgery. And after I started my neurosurgery training, I really like taking care of patients with brain tumors, just because those patients tend, to be just unfortunate for their diagnosis, and it's just, most of the time it's just bad luck that patients get a brain tumor, and those patients were always very grateful for the kind of care that we were willing to provide. Brain tumors, dealing with brain tumors is also a field that requires a lot of aspects of other medical, personnel, like oncologists. You need radiation doctors, radiation oncologists. So it's a very collaborative field, and that was what got me interested in it. And after my residency, decided to do some extra training to be able to take care of those patients appropriately.
I'm surprised, man. Go ahead.
No, I just said awesome.
Yeah, really,
Yeah.
really.
Mhm.
I'm surprised that all of the research triangle didn't try to keep you there, man. I don't know how they let you go. You know.
Well, I mean, I'm very happy to be in this area. It's I really when I interviewed at the various places when I was looking for a job, and I really like the group of people that works here at Tidelands Health. Have a very collegial atmosphere. Also, being close to the beach was a big plus as well, and
Yeah,
that was really a need
quality of life.
for someone that specializes in brain tumors here, because there's really no other uh, you know neurosurgeon that's specifically trained in that in this area. The closest is Charleston, which is 2 hours away. So for patients to travel 2 hours away from this area to go seek care, and then in this area there's a lot of older patients, a lot of retirees who come here. So being able to provide that level of care here was one of the factors that drew me to this area as well.
Mhm.
Wow.
So, Brother Edward, let's get into the topic, because we certainly, I'm sure, have a lot of great information that we'd like to share with the community.
Absolutely.
And again, if you have any questions, please drop them into the chat and we'll share them with our special guests. So let's start with the most simple question. What is a stroke?
Yeah. So this is a confusing term because there are different types of stroke, but broadly, a stroke is sort of two broad categories of strokes. A stroke is basically when there's the blood flow to the brain is blocked, most of the time either by a clot or a plaque. And when that happens, that part of the brain doesn't get the blood flow that it requires to function. And when that happens, basically that part of the brain that doesn't get the blood flow dies off. And then that's a stroke. That's a type of stroke that's called an ischemic stroke. The other type of stroke you can have is when a blood vessel that supplies part of the brain, has a really high pressure in it and it bursts. Essentially, it's like basically a pipe bursting in the brain, and the blood that's supposed to flow through the normal blood vessel spills out into the brain itself. And when that happens as well, that part of the brain doesn't get the normal blood flow, and that part of the brain dies off. So essentially, a stroke is when there's a death in the part of the brain that's caused by either a rupture of a blood vessel, meaning a blood vessel bursting in the brain, or it gets blocked by a clot or plaque within that blood vessel wall.
So you've described the types of strokes that happen, and yet we've heard people talk of having massive strokes and mini strokes.
Right.
What is the difference between the massive and the mini stroke?
Yeah. So a mini stroke usually is a stroke that most of the time is caused by small blood clot. There's a small blood clot that travels through the blood vessel in the brain. It blocks that blood flow, and the patient develops symptoms. And typically those symptoms, there's an acronym that we use to decide, whether a patient is having symptoms or to know what to look for. And that acronym is called BEFAST, BEFAST. So the B stands for if you're having balance problems, dizziness. That's usually due to a stroke at the base of the brain. That's called that area of the brain is called the cerebellum. And that if that part of the brain is affected, that can cause dizziness, balance problems, difficulty walking. So that's the B part of it. And that happens all of a sudden. The E part is eyes. So if patients have all of a sudden problems with their vision, they're not able to see. Sometimes they may feel like a cotton is coming down over their vision. That's because of a blood clot blocking the blood flow into the eyes. So that could be a sign of a stroke as well. The next acronym F stands for face. So typically if the face is drooping down, if you ask someone to smile and you notice one corner of their mouth is drooping, it's not smiling, it's not moving appropriately, they start drooling on one side of the face, that's because the blood flow to that part of the brain that controls one side of the face has been affected. And that's one of those symptoms. The A part, BEFAST, stands for arms. So if all of a sudden the patient has weakness in one arm, they can't lift the arm up, they're not able to write, or if they have numbness, the arm feels dead, they lose sensation to that arm, that could be signs of a stroke, or leg as well. So if the leg is weak, they're dragging one leg, or numbness in the leg, that's a sign of a stroke. The S part is speech. So if they're slurring their words, they're jumbling up the words, not speaking correctly, those will be the most important signs to look for. And the T just stands for time, and that means, brain is time, so you have to call 911 right away, try to get to the hospital right away to get that treated. So those are the signs to look for. So for a person that has a mini stroke, if that happens just for a short period of time, maybe it happens for a few minutes, and then it goes away, they go back to normal, or it happens for, let's say, 30 minutes to an hour, and then all of those symptoms go away, that could be a mini stroke, meaning that part of the brain was blocked by a blood flow, but then it goes away, and that blood clot gets washed away, and the blood to the brain gets returned, then that's what a mini stroke is. But usually when you start having symptoms like that, like a mini stroke, that's a sign that possibly you could be, getting ready to have a big stroke. So a massive stroke is when a big blood vessel in the brain completely gets blocked off or completely ruptures, and there's a lot of bleeding in the brain, or just a large portion of the brain dies off due to that. That's like a massive stroke. And typically that can cause things like, basically the half of a body could be paralyzed completely. So like if one of the big blood vessels in the brain, that's called the MCA vessel, that stands for middle cerebral artery. If that gets blocked off, a patient could completely lose the ability to speak. That's permanent. Or they could lose ability to move, one side of the body. The interesting thing is that the left side of the brain controls the right side of the body, and the right side of the brain controls the left side of the body. So if you have a stroke that affects the right side of the brain, for example, that person could be paralyzed on their whole left side. They're not able to move their left arm, left leg. That will be a massive stroke. And sometimes you can recover function, meaning sometimes some of that strength or function that's lost can come back, and sometimes it may not. And that's why time is really important. If you can go to the hospital right away, there actually treatment that we can give. There are medications, clot busting medication that we can give that can return back some of that function. But once it's dead, then that may not recover.
And that's why the time piece is so important, correct?
Exactly. Correct. Yeah, that's why the time piece in BFAST is theirs. Right. So time is ticking.
So you've pretty much covered a wide range of the points that we wanted to go over tonight. What is a stroke? You've talked about the difference between mini and massive. Earlier you covered the different types of strokes and how to recognize it with BFAST. There is a question in the comments that kind of leads to the next thing, which is, what's the difference between a stroke and the brain tumor? And the question, Priscilla Fuller, thank you for watching this evening. What are symptoms of brain tumors?
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that question, Priscilla. So the symptoms of brain tumor is actually very similar to symptoms of strokes. So if you have any of that symptoms that we just discussed in BFAST, those also could be signs of a brain tumor. The only difference is usually for a stroke, that usually happens all of a sudden because it's something that happens quickly. If you have a blood clot in the brain or the brain burst, it happens all of a sudden. Usually for brain tumors, most of the time it's sort of a gradual process, depending on the type of tumor that it is. If it's a slow-growing tumor, those symptoms can develop over a period of weeks to months, sometimes even a year. If it's a benign brain tumor that has been growing slowly over time, patients can complain of difficulty walking. They start losing their balance over time, and that slowly gets worse. They start noticing tingling, numbness on one side of the body, difficulties with speech. That just gradually starts to happen. Sometimes we do see symptoms that happen quickly, like within a few days, that they can develop symptoms. One other component is seizures. So when a patient has a seizure, that could also be a sign of a brain tumor. rarely you can have a stroke present with a seizure, but it's rare. Most of the time, seizures are related to an abnormal function of the brain that could be due to tumor or due to other causes in the brain. But if you notice any of the symptoms, the best thing is to, if it's all of a sudden and it's concerning for a stroke, is to call 911 right away so you can get to a hospital right away. In terms of the treatment, for the clot busting medication that we can give, we have to know that the stroke is within a 4.5 hour period of time. Okay. Once you're outside of that window of 4.5 hours, unfortunately, they may not be able to give you that clot busting medication. In terms of treatment as well, sometimes you can actually, if it's a massive stroke, like a big blood vessel, that's called a large vessel that's occluded, that's blocked, they can actually go in. We can go in with a catheter and actually put the catheter, we go through the groin into one of the big arteries in the groin, put the catheter all the way up around the heart, go up into the big blood vessels in the neck and go into the brain, and we can actually pull down the blood clot from the brain, by doing that. And that the patient has to be within 24 hours of a stroke for us to be able to do that. So that's another reason why it's important to call right away if you notice that.
To act quickly. Yeah. One of the I can see you. It's fascinating, but at the same time, you're right. It does give you chills.
Chills, man.
So one of the interesting facts that we showcased on the flyer for tonight's show talks about African Americans being 50% more likely to have a stroke as compared to white adult counterparts. And can you tell us why that's so?
Yeah, so that's a good question. There are multiple reasons why that is. The primary risk factors for stroke are, high blood pressure is a big risk factor for having the hemorrhagic stroke, which is the type of stroke where you have bleeding in the brain. And so to kind of break it down by percentages, so the most common type of stroke is called ischemic stroke. That's the stroke where a blood clot happens and the blood flow to that part of the brain dies off. In the United States, that's about 87% of all strokes are ischemic strokes, meaning due to blockage of the blood vessel. Most of the time, what causes that is due to plaques in the walls of an artery. And, so not having a healthy diet or a diet that's high in fat and fried food is a big risk factor for developing plaques in your blood vessel. So, we know the diet of, African Americans is very high in fat, high in fried food. So, fried chicken, fried fish, those type of diet. And also that's not high in vegetables as well. Healthy fruits and vegetables put you at risk of having, what we call atherosclerosis, meaning you have hardening of your blood vessel, and plaques can form in the blood vessel. And over time, as that builds up, it can block off the blood flow. Also, if you have high blood pressure or hypertension, that also hardens the wall of the arteries. And we do know there's a higher risk of that in patients who are of African American descent. And there are multiple reasons why that is. One is just due to the lack of access to good health care. So if you have high blood pressure and you don't go to your doctor regularly to be on medications to treat it, or if you don't have money to afford medications, and that hypertension continues over time, that hardens the wall of the arteries, causes a higher risk of having the plaques, or higher risk of that blood vessel rupturing if the pressure becomes really high. Other risk factors include smoking. We do know in this area, in the southeastern part of the United States, it's actually called a stroke belt. Meaning that's part of the area of the U.S. that has the highest risk of patients who end up with stroke complications, who get strokes, who die from strokes, who have disabilities from stroke. And that also has to do with the high population of African Americans in this area, but also the lack of access to healthcare facilities in a timely manner in this area. And smoking For example, North Carolina is a big area where tobacco is grown historically in the U.S., and a lot of people around this southeastern part of the U.S. smoke. And smoking, what that does is it also hardens the wall of your arteries and increases the risk of stroke as well. So those are some of the risk factors. And then the other things is diet, and we talked a little bit about diet and exercise. So not getting enough exercise as well, increases risk of stroke. So it's recommended that we get at least 30 minutes of exercise a day, where you're getting your heart rate up, doing some kind of activity. Usually I recommend patients, even if they can't do 30 minutes at a time, you can do 15 minutes, one in the morning, one in the evening, walking, going to a gym, or even if you don't have a gym, exercising at home. There are lots of exercise videos on YouTube that you can walk, or just going outside, walking, doing some form of exercise every day is important in reducing your risk of stroke. And the other component to that is weight as well. So we know obesity is also a risk factor for stroke. So patients who are overweight, who are obese, if we look at the data, we do know that's more common in the Black population compared to other races in terms of risk of obesity. And it all ties up with risk of high blood pressure, diabetes. So reducing these risk factors helps us reduce the risk of strokes.
Mm-hmm. So last week we had a guest on the show who talked about how the facility that she works at provides access to medical care, affordable access. And as you were speaking about the risk factors and the stats, I thought about the social determinants of health, right, and how access is definitely a really big issue.
Yeah.
So as you deal with the patients who come through because they have stroke cases, I'm sure you're not the first point of contact for them. You are that person who is trying to save their lives, basically, right. When things happen. First point of contact, and you've given some recommendations on things that people can do, such as the exercise and all of that. But first point of contact should be with their general practitioner, perhaps, to get tested to find out, where they are with high blood pressure and all of these other risk factors. Is that what you would recommend?
Yes, definitely. So yeah, your primary care physician, your primary care provider, if it's a doctor, a nurse practitioner, a physician assistant, is usually the first person of contact. And it's recommended that everybody, get at least one checkup a year. So, if you don't know the last time that you've seen a doctor, you should definitely try to make an appointment to see one, because you do want to be getting at least annual checkups to make sure, your blood pressure is under control. They do lab work to check your cholesterol levels, make sure all your cholesterol are within normal limits, because having high cholesterol is another risk factor that increases your risk of having, plaques in the blood vessel and strokes. And making sure your blood sugar is under control. So all of those things should start with your primary care doctor. Obviously, if you develop any of the symptoms that we talked about today from that BFAST acronym, you need to call 911 right away and get to a hospital right away. But just as a routine, you should see your primary care doctor at least once a year, if not more, if you're on medications that needs to be controlled for things like high blood pressure, hypertension. One other thing I didn't mention was alcohol as well. So alcohol is also a risk factor. So drinking in moderation, or if you have history of alcoholism, working on quitting alcohol, that's also a big risk factor. Just trying to limit the intake. It's recommended not to drink more than 2 to 3 glasses per week. If you're a female, I think for a male, maybe 4 to 5 per week.
That's the hard stuff, right? You're talking about.
Right.
All right. Yeah, but there
are people that drink wine with glasses, like a glass of wine with dinner every day, and that's okay. There are some studies that shows that does reduce risk of heart issues as well. But
is it red wine?
There's lots
Getting
of
ready.
data. Most of the data is red wine,
Yeah.
but there's lots of conflicting information, whether it helps us not. But as long
She's
as
glad to hear
everything is
that.
in moderation, you're not doing it, too much. That's
Yeah, so,
reasonable.
so you know, it's that word moderation that it's kind of deceptive sometimes. You know, all doctors will say, if you do this in moderation, you do that in moderation, then you'll be okay. Well, I mean, don't use the word be okay, but it's like all right to do that if you're comfortable saying that. So it sounds like it's immeasurable. Okay, it's immeasurable. Yeah, so how do you place a quantity on moderation?
Yeah, I mean, specifically for alcohol, the signs to watch out for would be if you're noticing that you're drinking first time you wake up. That's something that's concerning. If you're noticing that that's starting to affect relationship, if people around you, your spouse or friends are telling you you're drinking too much, that's also a bad sign. And then going to extremes where drinking to the point of passing out. Obviously those are concerning, signs to watch out for. With smoking, I would recommend, quitting smoking. If you do smoke, just because those we know there's a direct link with smoking to a bunch of other different diseases, not just high blood pressure, not just, plaques in your blood vessels, but also things like lung cancer as well, COPD, difficulty breathing. There's a lot of connections of smoking to multiple diseases. And so for that, I usually recommend patients work on quitting. And there are different resources out there. There's a quit line that you can use, or talk to your primary care doctor for other alternatives like nicotine patches, lozenges, and things like that to help you quit smoking.
So we got, what kind of, is that considered a major operation to have a plaque removal? That's a huge operation.
Yeah, so it depends on. So do you mean by removal of a blood clot?
Plaque that's in your arteries. I mean, that can be determined that it's there. I mean,
yeah. So most of the time when that's done, it's usually plaques in your carotid arteries, which is in the neck. There are big blood vessels in the neck. It's basically the blood vessels that carry blood from the heart to the brain. If you do have plaques in your neck that's causing little plaques to be flicked off and going into the brain and causing the mini strokes like we talked about earlier, then based on, usually there's a test we can do to see how much the percentage of your inside of the blood vessel that's clotted off. Based on the results of that, can determine whether you need to be on a blood thinner. That's usually the first step. So something like aspirin or Plavix or a different type of blood thinner. But if it's to the point where it's close to getting clotted off, then they might recommend a surgery where we actually make an incision in the neck and physically open up that blood vessel, take out the plaque, and close it back up. There are some risks to that, but sometimes that's something that needs to be done either by a vascular surgeon, or some places a neurosurgeon will do it. But those are usually if you start having signs of like mini strokes, or you've had a stroke and we noticed the cause of the stroke was because the blood vessel in your neck is almost clotted off or is throwing some plaques off. But it's a surgery that most times patients just stay in the hospital one night. If everything goes well and there are no complications, I can go home the next day. That's called a carotid endarterectomy. Is the name of that procedure, or CEA is what we call it.
Oh, so it's an in and out procedure.
What's that? It's usually an overnight stay in the hospital and going on the next day most of the time. Yeah.
I've heard of cases where patients have had many strokes and I guess it required a very minimal hospital stay, if any at all. Is that correct? That could be outpatient treatment as well?
Yeah, typically for strokes, most of the time you will get admitted to the hospital. If it's a small stroke where you just have, let's say, minor symptoms, you had some slurred speech, and then it went away, or you actually had an actual stroke, they've done a brain scan to see that most of the time that's an ischemic stroke, which is a stroke that's occurring from blockage of the blood vessel. Typically what we do is we put you on blood thinners. If you don't have to have a procedure done where they go in through the groin to do that, what's called a thrombectomy, to remove the clot off. If you're just treating you with blood thinners, and they will do a variety of tests before you leave the hospital to find the cause of the stroke, which would include things like ultrasound of your neck or a CAT scan of your neck to look at blood vessels in the neck. Sometimes we look at the heart to see if there's any blood clots in the heart, because sometimes the patients that have what's called atrial fibrillation, it's an abnormal, irregular beating of the heart. Sometimes clots can form in the heart that then travel up into the brain. So they do some tests of that. They'll do your lab work. And once all of that has been done, if we don't see anything that you need to be in the hospital for, typically we'll have you see a therapist as well, like a physical therapist, a speech therapist, make sure you're able to swallow okay, you're able to walk okay. If you pass all of that test and the next day you're able to go home, you could go home the next day. Mm-hmm. Obviously, if it's a big stroke where like one side of the body is paralyzed or is really weak and you need therapy, you may need to go to rehab before you go home. So sometimes we do that. That may be a longer hospital stay.
Okay. Priscilla Fuller has another question. What is the likelihood of a person recovering from massive stroke after a year?
Yeah, so there's a good chance of recovery with any kind of stroke. Obviously, if it's a massive stroke, it depends on how bad it is. There's different what part of the brain it is. So it really depends on that person, particularly. And the older you are, the harder it is to recover from stroke. So patients who are in their 80s, 70s tend to recover less frequently than patients who are younger, because for younger patients, part of the brain still has the ability to kind of take over some function of all other parts of the brain. But usually we tell patients, give you up to about a year to have a full recovery. Really, after a year, you kind of end up with what you have, because the brain just doesn't have that capacity to improve over time. Mm-hmm. So it really depends on the person, the other medical problems that they have, their overall health. But with rehab, most patients with strokes tend to have some recovery. How much of that they do recover function, it's hard to tell, and it just it depends on time and how the brain responds to that insult.
I have one more question, because we have talked about some stats, and the stats typically refer to adults, but is it possible for young people to have strokes? And if so, how young? What's the youngest you've seen as far as the case?
Yeah, no, it's definitely possible for young patients to have strokes. There are different causes of stroke. So even little kids who have some kind of genetic abnormality could be susceptible to strokes, or if they have a blood type. Sometimes there are different diseases that can happen with blood that causes you to have to abnormally form clots, where your blood is more likely prone to forming clots. Those patients can get strokes. Sometimes we see strokes in patients with sickle cell, because with sickle cell, part of the blood doesn't flow very well if it's sickled, and it can clot off a part of the brain and cause a stroke. So sometimes we do see that. Nowadays, we are seeing younger patients who have obesity, who childhood obesity is a thing now, where we see patients in their late 20s, 30s who have obesity, who have high blood pressure, who have high cholesterol, who have diabetes. Those patients could get a stroke, because those three medical problems put you at a high risk of having stroke.
If it's not treated.
Correct. If it's untreated.
Continuous treatment,
even sometimes things like taking oral contraceptive, and if you're taking oral contraceptive medications for women and you smoke, a combination of those two things as well can put you at risk of having blood clots, higher risk of having blood clots, and that could also cause a stroke.
You mentioned. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
You mentioned blood type. What is the predominant blood type that?
Good question.
So I guess by blood type, I just mean an abnormal. It's not the classic blood type that we check when we check a blood type, like type A, type B, AB blood type or O blood type. It's not. I don't mean that type of blood type. I just mean there are some syndromes that you can have abnormal protein in your blood that causes you to have a risk of forming clots. So it's similar to the other flip of the coin is like people who have hemophilia, for example, that puts them at risk of having higher risk of bleeding. So the opposite of that, there's some medical diagnosis like if you have a protein C or S type, that could put you at higher risk of forming blood clots. But that will be something that we will test for if you have a stroke, you come into the hospital and you're a young patient. They will look to see if there are any other abnormal genetic blood issues that could have caused that.
Mm-hmm. Brother Edward, this has been a fascinating topic.
We're not charging for this, are we?
We're not charging our audience for this information. The doc is not charging. He's educating the community right now. This is free 99, right?
I'll wait for that.
This is free 99. And I tell you, definitely learned more about strokes tonight than I have ever known before, and understanding the determinants of and risk factors, highly important, especially in the Black community. And just knowing the other stats that we put into focus as we were preparing for this show. Black men, 70% more likely to die from stroke. African American women, twice as likely to have a stroke compared to Hispanic white women. Those are very alarming statistics when we think about the impact on our community, our population, our culture. So, Doctor, you've given us a tremendous amount of information tonight. And we just, we definitely want to thank you for being with us and for sharing all of this wonderful information. Great tie-in with what we talked about last week, Brother Edward, as far as, seeking healthcare now. Do not wait until you're sick. Actually, go ahead, get your checkups with your general doctors. We had a guest on the show last week from Care Team. Tidelands Health, offers, their medical services, practitioners. There's really no reason why, I think a lot of times within our culture, we're just afraid to find out the things that we really need to know as it relates to our health. But, this great information hopefully will motivate our viewers to either go and seek care themselves or to pass this information along to people in their community who they know will more than likely be impacted because they are in those primary risk factors. So, thank you so much for the information. This has been wonderful tonight. Dr. I want to say it correctly. Omofoye. Gotcha. All right.
I'm sure there's a lot more that you can tell us, but we'll hopefully have you back on the program again.
Sure. Yeah, this has been a great opportunity, and I'm glad that hopefully this is helpful to folks in the community. But yeah, if any questions arise, or if there's any concerns, or patients who have any of the issues we discussed, or concerns about brain tumors and things like that, they can feel free to reach out to me as well. But yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Continued success in your career field, and we're certainly blessed to have you in it. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you guys, and thank you for what you guys do as well in terms of educating the community. I think this is.
Hope I don't have to see you soon.
Me either.
Not in your office anyway.
Hey, Brother Edward, we've learned how to avoid it. We've learned how to prevent it tonight, right?
He's giving us a good education for what to do, and so
absolutely
to keep us from him, from seeing him.
Yeah. Well, take care. We know that you had a long day. Go get some rest, and we appreciate having you on the show.
All right, you guys have a good and happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year to everyone.
Same to you and your family. Yes,
bless.
Absolutely. Well, Brother Edward, that was some excellent information. I don't know if he's still watching, but Helen Porterfield says, thank you, Dr. Omofoye, a great doctor. Priscilla Fuller, thank you for this information. We're happy you're in our community, and we really are. It's great. It's great to see us in positions like that. I get excited when I see that, and it's something that the youth need to see because they need to understand, what the career options are, and if they are inspired the way that Dr. Omofoye was inspired, then it's amazing. He said engineering and then kind of transitioned that to surgery.
Field.
I can see it.
Surgery.
I can see it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely. It goes together.
Yeah.
It directs him, and he can navigate very well.
The hands have to be steady. The hands have to be, they have to be steady. He's a neurosurgeon.
I regret that I don't think we got any information as to where he's located. I know it's Tideland, but Tideland has a number of offices. But we'll get there. They can always
I'm sure they can visit the website and probably find him. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, that's great. Well, Brother Edward, we certainly had a wonderful show tonight. Next week, we will have Brother Richard Williams, Pastor Richard Williams. He's with Brother Williams.
Absolutely.
He is with the United Way, and he has a very interesting topic that he wants to talk about as far as an initiative that he's working on now with the United Way. He says 72% of kids entering Horry County schools are kindergarten ready. Of that, only 7% of Black children are ready.
Wow.
So that's particularly alarming. 72% of kids entering Horry County schools are kindergarten ready. Only 7% of Black children are ready. And what he wants to do is come on and promote the basics of how to get children ready for school. And so he wants to talk about tips for parents on how they can get their children ready. And the major issues that 70% of those kids don't go to preschool or daycare, so they miss a lot of the socialization and other skills that the basic program can coach parents and caregivers to do. So he wants to talk about this program that does just that. And he will be with us next Tuesday, which is December the 5th already. It will be December actually Friday, I think, December comes in. Woo, this year is gone. But Brother Richard Williams will be with us, Pastor Richard Williams. And he's known for his, I don't know if you've had him, Brother Edward, his pastor pies.
Oh, we've never had him on the program, I don't think.
Sweet potato pies. He can make a sweet potato pie. He really can. It's very good. But he's not going to be here to talk about his pastor pies. He's going to be here to talk about this initiative with United Way.
Yeah, and I'm sure he has a lot. He has a lot to offer. I'm sure.
Yes, he does. He's very talented. Doing a lot of work in the community. Brother Richard was one of the honorees at the Pearls of Excellence Gala.
Absolutely.
Along with the two of us. And but his award was well deserved. Just out of the box thinking. The community refrigerator project, where there's a community refrigerator that is stocked with items, and if people are in need of some extra food or whatever, you can go to this refrigerator and get food for free, basically.
Right.
And it's a major community project that he founded, and it definitely has taken on a life of its own. He has a lot of supporters who are helping him with that. But Richard does a lot of things in the community. Right now, he's on a mission trip. I mean, he's doing tremendous things with the youth, and just trying to make sure that, especially the youth. I mean, he has 3 beautiful children that they are taken care of through programs like what's being offered through United Way. And so it's a part of his life's work, and we're happy that he's going to be on our show. We're also working on a show for December the 12th. I'm not going to reveal that information just yet, but it is a very intriguing show as well that is a critical topic right now that is impacting the youth in some very detrimental ways. And so once I've confirmed the guests for that particular show, I'll be able to talk more about that. So we'll have more details about that show December the 5th when we have Richard on with us. But other than that, Helen Porterfield has posted where we can find Dr. Omofoye. He's in the Medical Park West Building, Highway 17, Merle's Inlet, room 302 or 306. Thank you so much.
Oh, no, that Porterfield family. What are you doing, April?
We're going to add her to the Porterfield report. We're
going to have to do something. Might have to do
something.
We're
going to have to add her to the Porterfield report. I'm going to get a picture and add her to that.
I bet the twins are behind all that. I bet.
They may be. They probably, yeah. So we know where they get it from, right? Yeah.
So April didn't ask them to make this announcement, but the Asher Theater, which has been bringing us a lot of bringing to the community, a lot of acts and the good entertainment, and they're asking for donations now for continuation of their entertainment stuff like that. So I have not sent out the communique, but it's on their website, I believe.
Huh. Okay. So they have a formal announcement about that. Okay.
Right. But in addition to that, we will assist them by sending it out as much as we can. Their request for donations for the operation there. At least that's the way I'm reading it.
Okay. All right.
So.
We'll make sure to share that information on the World Community Facebook page, and I'll share it in the network as well. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. They've had some good entertainment there for the past 3 or 4 years, I guess.
Yes.
Maybe 5. And we just want to make sure that that's sustainable and it's kept up, for our community.
Okay. All right. Well, Brother Edward, this has been wonderful tonight. We appreciate all of our wonderful guests. Thank you. Verdell Beckman from Columbia, always with us, and Priscilla Fuller. We thank you. Helen Porterfield, we thank you tonight. And of course, our cheerleader, always in the background, Sister Joella McQueen, Boss Lady. I'm going to call her Boss Lady.
Boss Lady.
Boss Lady is in the background cheering us on. So this has been a great show tonight. Don't forget to visit wcmagazine.net. You can see the playback of the show by going right to the website. It's on the homepage, but also right next to the thumbnail of this particular show, you will see a copy of the magazine. It's Diabetes Awareness Month, and flip through it, see all the good stuff that Brother Edward and other contributors were able to compile for this month. And pretty soon it'll be time for us to flip to December, so you'll want to make sure you take a look at the November issue.
Absolutely.
Before it's in the archive. So
that's coming up very soon. Okay, the next issue is coming up very soon. So
very good. All right. Well, Brother Edward, it's been a great show.
So it has been. Kudos to all of the planning committee for the Whitmore Alumni Association. The gala's coming up. Looking forward to it.
Yes. We are looking forward to the gala. I pushed out the sold out announcement this week. No more tickets available. There's we don't have any ticket sales available at the door. So this is a good problem to have because hopefully it means that next year we can make it bigger and better. And I'm sure the association will do just that. We want to thank once again everyone who purchased tickets, tables, advertising for the souvenir calendar. That is going to be a tremendous piece that you can use all year long, 2024 calendar, and you're getting it. It's going to be available for you to purchase at the gala so that you can have it ready to go into January 2024. And so we just want to thank everyone who supported the effort. And we will see all of you on December 23rd. Doors open. We'll probably open doors at around 6:15, 6:30, and the event will begin at 7 p.m. And we're at 4 Points by Sheraton.
If you don't have anything to do that day before the event, as we said last week, just walk right down to the State Bridge. You can walking down the State Bridge. We've secured a room there where you can see some of the memorabilia of the Whittemore and Conway Pass. I mean, there's some interesting photos. We're gonna have some more for you next week that we can show to you just as a preview. But we just got much photo for that. So for your pleasure, from 10 o'clock in the morning to 2, no cost. Just go down and check out the room. It'll be there available for you. Our videos will be showing on the big screen that the hotel has provided for us. So we just want you, while you're going to be really gearing up for your 6 o'clock event at the gala, just spend some time. And this will tune you up because you're going to be prepared for what is going to be offered at the gala. They've got some stuff I'm sure probably haven't told you all about, but it's going to be nice. Okay.
Yep. That evening dinner, dancing, and evening of honors, we're going to have a really good time. Holiday fun. So, again, thank you all for your support. And Brother Edward, if all hearts and minds are clear, just want to wish everybody a great week. I can't believe we're already tomorrow's Wednesday. These days and weeks are rolling by quickly. We just had Thanksgiving.
Yeah, when you're busy.
Yes.
So, God willing, we'll see you next week, 7 p.m. And like April said, a wonderful guest. It's going to tell you, you're going to like Reverend Williams. You're going to enjoy what he has to say. Okay.
Absolutely. All right. Well, take care, everyone. God bless.
God bless.
Thank you for watching the World Community Magazine's Hour of Power Live on Facebook with your host Edward McQueen and April Garner.